Kuphela kuphe emakhaya amadolobheni asakhona khona sayanamukela bekunene sesifikile thina ke lehlelo Yilungelo lakho, it's your right. Sinisela ke lehlelo lapha kumahamba phambili SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Mina ke ngimsimpiwe eNgcongwane. Mbukele cabanga nje simo sekuthi ke uthenga impahla esitolo ngeaccount bese ke sitolo ke singalethi tonke letinto lokuthengile ukhathatheke ke njengemthengi bese uthi ke sitolo sitawuthatha letimpahla takho letingakapheleli ngoba phela anisavani nalomthengisi bese ke uthola ke sosenkingeni sosemabhukini lamnyama eCredit Bureau. Ingabe ke lokhu ke athini malungelo akho asisingene ke shwi endzabeni namhla uva ukuthi ngalesi simo lesifikele wena umthengi waseGoli. Now, finding your name in the Credit Bureau is not only a stigma some consumers present with a passion, but to be negatively listed or even blacklisted is even worse. One Soweto consumer is in a bizarre situation. He was negatively listed in the credit bureaus after a furniture store failed to deliver what he bought. As a result, his life has come to a standstill.
Our system that was not complete, and already they are saying Guti.
Umduduzi Mkhonza uvule lo nyaka ka-2022 evathi qaqa into emcabisana bomi uthi ngiyokuba wathenga igumba kwivenkile eyaziwayo ngethemba lokuzonwabisa kwezolide ezidluleyo zikaDisemba. Indaweni yokufuna oko ebekuthengile kwasike kwafika nto yimbi. Wathi makhe aphinde alinde hleze kufika oko kungazange kuthunyelwe yivenkile.
Baletha ipika nje kuphela iamplifier ne DVD player ayangafika. So ngibafonele futhi again ngibatshela ukuthi no ngilokhu ngilindile phela angiboni imnyakazo aningifoneli nithule nje anisho ukuthi kwenzakalani but hayi no sizovula iquery sicheck ukuthi kwenzakalani and then ke bayivule leyo query leyo and then I was still hoping ukuthi since bavule iquery bazobuya back kimi bangitshela kodwa ayikho into abayisho kimi azange babuye back kodwa imina wayibafonela with my airtime every time trying to find out ukuthi kwenzakalani bona beyithulele nje.
Zaqinqeleka insuku elindile lomthengi de kwaqala umnyaka omtsha waye uphela umonde kuluka Mkhonza ngenxa yethuba elide elindile. De wafikile kwisigqubo sokuba isikhalazo sakhe asiswangaso.
So into engayithola kubona ukuthi abanandaba nama client wabo and abawanakekela ama client wabo, the only thing abanendaba nayo ibona. So I client nje kuphela uma ngabe sekufikile lokho abakufunayo kubo yikhona abafocusa kukho.
Okamkhonza wafikela kwisigqibo sokuba uyabuqhawula ubudlelwane nale venkile esithi akusekhondo imdibanisa nayo kanti lo mthengi utsho phansi isitya sigcwele le venkile seyimbekele omnye umqobo empilweni yakhe. Emva koko wathi efuna ukuthenga isithuthi esitsha wafumanisa ukuba akazokwazi ukuba igama lakhe selikwincwadi ezimnyama zeCredit Bureau. Oku kwangumnqa kuye kuba akazikhumbula esophula isivumelwano okanye isithembiso senhlawulo. Akukhumbulayo kokuba ivenkile le engazange ihloniphe isivumelwano. Iofisi exazula impixono phakathi kwabathengi nonovenkile iConsumer Goods and Services Ombud ithi kukho undonakele kulomba kaMkhonza.
Section 19 iti once the shop accepts agreement or imali of a consumer, they need to honor, they need to deliver, you know, at the agreed time and agreed date. And khona lapho nje they've disappointed him, they've let him down.
Omar Ramaro uthi noxa kunjalo ayiphelanga apho. Xa beqolasela nzulu bafundisa ukuba kukhona apho okamkhonza anokube uphazame khona.
Inkinga ekhona lana esibonayo, then the consumer Mr. Mkhonza uye wathini, come fetch your things. Already uye wa that statement simkhiphile from the Protection of Consumer Protection Act. Ngoba if it was, let me put it in this way, I'm cancelling the agreement. So when you say come fetch your things, from where I'm sitting, I'm not sure Guti did he cancel the agreement. So Magubega cancelling the agreement, that means the two departments from the shop, I need to go to department yet delivery where the agreement was concluded, and a good department a manager your manager looking into the credit agreement. So which means on the side your credit agreement he did not honor. He breached the contract.
okaRamaro uthi nje ngokulibala ukuthi uyarhoxa kwisivumelano londo ingakufaka ingxakini ucebise ngelithi xa ukulemeko uncedo lungafumaneka kumaziko afana ne-Credit Ombudsman okanye i-National Credit Regulator kungoku into ephambili kukamkhonza yokuba lingosulwa njani na igama lakhe ezincwadini ezimnyama zase-Credit Bureau. Vuyisile Mdoda, Yilungelo Lakho.
Asibonga kakhulu ke kuvuyisile Mdoda ngalo mbiko ukutsingisa kabanti ngalendzaba yetfune asesimukele ke Selina Makete lovela ke Credit Bureau Association noma ke CBA siphinde sibe nakabelo time lokuxhumana nathi ke ku Zoom. Ladies, very good afternoon to you. Sanimukele hleleni sanibonani.
Sawubona Simphiwe nababukeli emakhaya. Thank you for inviting us.
Okay, ngicela ngawusileni. I'm sure you've been listening to this conversation and this insert about the plight of Mduduzi. So angenda njani Mduduzi ke kule hlangothi?
Okay, Duduzi, firstly, what we are picking up is that he received incomplete goods. So he ordered a complete system, and yet only the speakers were delivered to him. So obviously, the credit provider did not provide what they agreed upon. So siyabona ukuthi wazama ukubatshela ukuthi you have delivered incomplete goods to me. So what needs to happen next is that umele akansele nabo njengoba sesioma ashilo ukuthi you have not honored your contract.
Yes.
And therefore I'm cancelling it because I did not receive what I bought. And in terms of the credit bureaus, section 72, sorry, doesn't allow for a contractual dispute, which is what we are having there. So a first point is to deal with the credit provider to say that you have not honored what you promised to deliver to me. Sort that out. Once that it's sorted out, then check out your credit report and see what information is included in there. Hence, we always encourage consumers to contact credit bureaus and check their credit reports, not only when they need to acquire credit, because they are entitled to a free credit report once a year, even if you are not in need of credit. It is still prudent to check your credit report. A first point of contact should have been to complain with the credit provider. If the credit provider is not listening, then those people to say that what they call them?
Consumer Council.
Yes, Consumer Council, to say that I did not receive what I got. They guide him from there. And afterwards, then when that dispute, contractual dispute is resolved, then that the bureaus can be approached to say that I have sorted this matter out with relevant parties. How does that now feature in my credit profile? And remember again, the credit provider needs to update the consumer's profile as these happenings, as these scenarios are taking place. If the contract is cancelled, they need to also advise the credit bureaus as per the information that they submit to them to say that perhaps this contract is cancelled or close it.
Just to come in there, whilst I've reported this particular retailer or the service provider to the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa or just about any other body, the case will drag on. So what then happens in that process as the case is still in progress? About 3-4 months and then in the meantime.
Thank you for that question. But remember, the credit bureaus, the dispute process of the credit bureaus doesn't cater for contractual disputes, right? So that you need to sort out with the credit provider because that's where the issue emanates. It gotta be sorted out from there onwards because if you approach the credit bureaus with a scenario that is outside their scope, what they can do is to refer you to parties that would be able to help you. Okay. In that regard, it is the credit provider that really needs to pull up their socks in helping the consumers. Okay,
all right. Now, Tebogo, let me also bring you into this conversation. Hi, Kabelo.
Hello, Simphiwe.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And this afternoon.
Siyabonga kakhulu ke kuba uhlanganyela kanye. Ngiyathemba ke boyilalelekele insert about the plight of Mduduzi. Ukuthi under these circumstances ungamluleka ke noma advise uthini ke Mduduzi, because the reasonable expectation or the reasonable step that so many consumers can take in this particular instance ukuthi ke ba self-medicate noma ke take the law into their own hands, such as withdrawing the payment because of the non-delivery of the services of goods by the retailers.
Definitely. I mean, I can understand the frustration. I've signed an agreement and you said you'll deliver. And then one thing led to another. I don't get all my goods that we actually agreed upon. Number one, that is the fault of the credit provider for the fact that I received my goods. They were not complete. I informed you that my goods were not, I don't have all of my goods, and still nothing was being done. Now, the thing is, what is very, very important for us as consumers to note is that if at all you are not happy with something that the credit provider has done, number one, the complaint is in twofold. There is that part of services not rendered, which is the goods not being delivered, or rather all the goods not being delivered. And then the second part is the credit agreement part, which is the part that now has affected him because now he's being listed at the credit bureaus due to the fact that he did not make payment. The other thing that the consumer failed to do was to communicate in writing, because as much as, yes, he did inform the credit provider, but still there was nothing in writing to confirm that the credit provider has now received the goods and that the agreement is now null and void. So for the fact that there is basically not much communication, or in writing rather, that is why now the consumer finds himself in the situation that is in. And another thing that we keep emphasizing to consumers, I mean, our processes at the credit ombudsman work that if at all you've logged your complaint with the credit provider, you only give them 20 working days in which to do the investigation. And if after 20 working days you don't receive any feedback, you basically are not happy with the outcome, you then approach an ombuds office with jurisdiction. And in this case, when it comes to the credit agreement, would be then the credit ombud. And then if at all it is the services that have not been rendered, would be the consumer goods and services ombud.
And I suppose such an impasse points to the question of who is powerful? Is it the consumer or the retailer? And who should be dancing to whose music?
The good thing about that is that the National Credit Act protects both parties, because now that's why we have ombud officers to say that, okay, we are now going to hear the side of the consumer. We need to also hear the side of the credit provider to say, what is it exactly that happened after the goods were delivered? And then during the time when the consumer actually logged the complaint and said, I don't have all of my goods, what then happened when the goods were taken from the consumer, and what happened when they were delivered back to the credit provider? We need to also get basically both parties involved and say, okay, what really happened? Because right now we're getting the story from the consumer. However, the credit provider is not explaining what were the delays when it came to this specific complaint.
I posed this question to Selina earlier on. Should a consumer withhold payment as a result of the non-delivery of goods and services? Say, for instance, that whatever dispute that has been lodged takes 3, 4, 5 months, and in the interim, then my name is being blacklisted.
Never, ever skip payments, because the thing is, it's shooting yourself in the foot. I've always said that it is always better to rather remain clean on your side. You've entered into a credit agreement. Nothing has actually been done about the credit agreement to say that now it has been either completely cancelled or whatever. This credit agreement still stands. So for you as a consumer, it's always rather best to keep to that credit agreement until it is resolved. Because trust me, we as the credit ombudsman, when we do investigations and find that indeed a consumer has probably overpaid on an account or anything like that, we can get that refund back to you. So rather stick to the agreement, remain clean on your side, so that you don't go and shoot yourself in the foot and then find that you have been unfairly listed. Because another thing as well that we would have to find out is whether the consumer was even informed prior to being listed. at the credit bureaus, because the thing is, prior to any a listing, rather default listing, a consumer is entitled to be informed 20 working days prior to that listing. So if all that did not happen, then a consumer can definitely dispute that information at the credit bureaus.
Okay, let's hold it right there. We'll continue with this conversation in just a moment. Let's take a pause right there. Leleke bekunene Yilungelo Lakho, a warm welcome back. Tincingo tefike tivuliwe ukuthi ke nawe ungafakelisa umbono wakho kule ndzaba yethu esidingisa namhla. Ungashayela icingo ke ku 011-714-6918 noma ke 011-714-6919. You can also email your thoughts to consumer@sabc.co.za. Ungaphinda usifole futhi na ku Facebook. Namhla ke bekunene, if you just joined us, sikhuluma ke ngema credit listing. Ukuthi ke nangabe kuyenteka uthola ukuthi uyabhadala imali monthly installment or monthly payments to a service provider or a credit provider or just about any other retailer, and then that particular retailer does not deliver on the goods. When what do you do? Do you withdraw payment, or rather do you withhold payment, as it were? So that's what we're discussing today. We are joined by Kabelo Dime from the Credit Ombudsman Office, as well as Selina Maketa from the Credit Bureau Association. Thank you so much for joining us. If you just joined us now. Now, Selina, I want us to talk a little bit more about, if a consumer disputes information on the credit report, what normally happens there?
All right, thank you for that question, Simpio. Then that directly speaks to the credit bureau's process. So we call it a dispute process. So that would normally happen in instances whereby normally consumers find out when they go apply for credit and they've been declined credit and they're being told that there is a negative listing, and the consumer himself or herself doesn't relate to that. They don't really remember them defaulting on anything. They've been consistent in paying their debts, right? So what a consumer needs to do in that instance is to get hold of the credit bureaus, all right? And the dispute process is free. So a dispute process, the credit bureaus, they've got their process to authentify if the consumer is the right person who says he or she is. Yes. Then they ask the details. What is in question? For example, the consumer says there's a default in my profile and I don't know about that. So what the credit bureaus will do is they will lodge a dispute. And once a dispute is lodged, it has to be resolved within 20 business days of that dispute being lodged. So what the credit bureaus will do is they will investigate, get hold of the data supplier or the credit provider to get credible evidence. Credible evidence is ubufakazi bokuthi kahle kahle, is that listing yours or not? And upon that, then there will be an outcome, whether depending on the credible evidence, to say that if there's no credible evidence, akunabufakazi bakuthi leso iskoloto default iyakho, that listing gets removed. And if there is credible evidence yokuthi ngemampela this is iskoloto sakho, then the information is retained. However, the consumer is being informed by the credit bureaus that if you are not satisfied about this outcome, you can reach out to the credit ombud with a reference number to further investigate. And all this process of the credit bureaus and the credit ombud is free. So it's very important for the consumers to also understand that they don't need to engage third parties to try help them sort out their payment profile, or rather the credit report. They can do that themselves and for free.
And I'm actually glad you raised that point, because it points me to my next question about the timelines with regards to how long a credit or a negative listing stays on my profile. You are not advising consumers to engage the services of third parties to clear their name. What if there is an incorrect listing or a negative listing on my profile? And I've heard so many consumers say that it takes as long as 3 months for their name to be cleared. Yet you may find that it's a negative listing as a result of incorrect information that has been provided in that credit report. Isn't it fair for the consumer then to be going through that? Because if they apply for credit, mind you, they need the service or the good right now, only to be confronted by a negative listing which is incorrect.
Okay, so the dispute process by law, as per the NCA, it's within 20 business days.
Okay.
So anything out of that, then it can be queried further. So if I log a dispute, if I provide, and perhaps the consumers are counting at the times when the credit bureaus are asking details from them to authentify them. Because remember, they gotta be certain that they are engaging the data subject, the consumer himself or herself. So once a dispute is logged, then the clock starts ticking. Day 1, day 2. And after 20 business days, within 20 business days, the issue needs to be resolved, either in favor of the consumer, whereby the information will be removed, or not in favor, where the information will be retained. And in that regard, the consumer is further advised that if you are not happy about this outcome, you can engage the credit ombudsman.
Okay.
So we are talking about 20 business days.
Okay. Now, Kabelo, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, have you been confronted with such cases as incorrect listing or incorrect negative listing on consumers' profiles? And how have you been able to handle this? And do you get a sense that consumers are aware of their rights when it comes to this?
I think that a lot of consumers are actually not aware of this, and especially the fact that you can do this yourself. I mean, Selina just mentioned that you don't need the assistance of a third party. You can do it by yourself for free, and you contact the credit bureaus. They log the complaint, they do the investigations. If you are not happy, or if they take longer than 20 working days, then you know that you can come to our offices, and which we do actually get a number of those complaints from consumers. Also, what Selina mentioned earlier on is the fact that that's why we always advise consumers, before you even go and apply for credit, check your credit profile regularly, because then you are able to nip such problems in the bud. Before you even go and apply for credit, you know that your credit profiles are all clear, you have disputed whatever information that was incorrectly or outdated on your credit profile, and then you can go to the credit provider and apply for credit with ease, knowing very well that everything on your side has been cleared. So we do continue to advise consumers. You get a free credit report from each and every single credit bureau annually. So take advantage of that. Go and check your credit profile. You'll never know what tomorrow will bring. You might want even a cell phone contract. Yeah. And because of something like this, then you will not be able to get a cell phone contract simply because you were not proactive when it came to that.
How did we get here, though? I mean, what's that criteria that credit bureaus use to assess and evaluate the validity of a complaint?
I mean, the credit bureau relies on the fact that the credit provider gives them the information. So they get this information from the credit provider. The credit provider will give the information to the credit bureau on a monthly basis. And that is why when you check your credit profile, you will see that it's listed monthly that, oh, on this month, the consumer did make payment. On this month, there were arrears on this account. So they update it on a monthly basis. So they get that information. And that is why, again, the National Credit Act gave the right to consumers to dispute such information if at all they feel it is incorrect. Again, it is being proactive on the part of the consumer to say that if I find that there is information that is incorrect, I go and dispute it immediately, and I know that at least it will be investigated fairly. And if you feel that you are not happy, again, we advise contact our office.
You know, Kabelo, you've been in this space for quite a while now. So from what you've seen or observed or heard or even worked on, are credit bureaus beholden to the retailers?
Well, the thing is, credit providers, when it comes to the credit bureaus, they like I said, the credit providers register with the credit bureau. Okay. And if the credit provider says, this is the information that we've got, the credit bureau will take that information. But if at all then it is incorrect, and the credit bureau does find that the information is incorrect, they will remove that information.
Okay. All right, thanks for raising that point. Please stay on the line. We'll certainly continue with our conversation in just a moment. Please do join us after this break. Welcome back. Yilungelo, Lakho, it's your right. Please do pick up that phone or your cell phone and dial this number 011-714-6918 or 011-714-6919. These are participation lines. Sishayele khona manje ube ingcenye le nkulumo yethu. Ngasithumela futhi ne-email ku consumer@sabc.co.za or interact with us on our Facebook messages. And I see there's a couple of Facebook messages. I'm going to be reading them in just a moment. But today, if you just joined us, sikhuluma ke ngekuthi nangabe une negative credit listing, and leo negative credit listing is not a fault of yours. It's a breach on the part of the retailer, of the credit provider or the service provider. What do you do in that particular instance? Ingabe uthatha umthetho ubeke etandleni takho, awuchubeki ubhadale leyo installment noma wenda njani? Namhla ke sina Kabelo Dime from the Credit Ombuds Office kanye ke na Selina Makate from the Credit Bureau Association. Now Selina, ngifuna ukusikhuluma kabanti ngekuthi ke nangabe ngifuna ke i-credit and credit is provided or is forwarded to me. So what is it that they assess? What criteria do they use to offer me credit? Because I've heard so many consumers again saying that they've been denied credit, they've been declined credit because of a bad credit profile or a negative listing. Yet they've got so much money, they earn so much, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't afford repaying that particular service or a good. So what is it that credit providers consider before granting me credit?
Okay, that is a very important question, because if one has to apply for credit and successfully be granted credit, they need to understand the criteria that the credit providers embark on to get to a decision whereby they are being offered credit. So ekuqaleni, a credit provider, they need to abide by law. So what they need to do is, by law, they need to check your credit report with the credit bureau. So we've got 5 credit bureaus that hold consumer credit information. And I'll talk about those credit bureaus right now so that the consumers can know where to go when they want their free credit report. So first, the credit provider will contact the credit bureau, that is the inquiry, to check your credit profile. Why are they doing that? They're doing that to see if you have been reaching your monthly obligations. Hence, Kabelo mentioned and reiterated that it is important to pay your installment every month on time, right? That's one. And secondly, they need to do affordability assessment. Affordability assessment, it means that your income subtract all the expenses and that other debts that you have. The remaining income, are you going to be able to afford the credit that you are applying for? And then again to say that, do you have a negative listing on your payment profile, the credit report, as we normally call it? Then once that has happened, the credit provider will decide when they are happy with the information that they have to grant you credit or not. So it's also important to understand that that is not the decision of the credit bureaus, but the credit providers, because they are the one that makes affordability assessment. They are the one that checks your credit report at the credit bureaus, and afterwards they are the one that really make a decision whether to grant you credit or not. And then again, if you are declined credit, it is again still within your rights to explain that why are we not offering you credit that you are applying for.
All right, great. Thanks for making that great point. Let's now take our first callers now. Elliot, Elliot, welcome to the show.
Yes, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you? Please speak to us. What's on your mind?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk to us.
I had some negative listing on my credit report. And also inquiries that were done without my authorization. I then sent a complaint to credit bureaus asking them to investigate and remove the negative listing and the inquiries. But after the investigation, my score was at around 720 for TransUnion, but then my score went down to 590. After those listings were removed from my report. So I just want to know, why was my score lowered to 590, but whereas those negative listings were removed from my report? Thank you very much.
Okay, Elliot, great question. Thank you so much for calling us this afternoon, and I'd love both of you ladies to respond to that. I'm going to start with you, Selina.
No problem. Thank you, Simpiwe. With Elliot, so what the credit bureaus do, hence he talked about the credit score. So they use the information on your credit profile, and it's analytics, right?
Yes.
That calculates that. So I believe that what he's saying is that there had been some inquiries.
Yes, unauthorized inquiries, yeah.
Unauthorized inquiries. So then we gotta engage with the credit bureau in question that how did my score decrease? But what I can say at the moment is that the credit bureaus use the information on your payment profile to average your score, your credit score. So if you also unhappy about the score that it's been allocated to you by credit bureau A, B, C, or D, then inquire with them, because then again it's within your right to understand that why is my credit score declining? Because one, there are unauthorized inquiries on my credit report. That's not me, and you have rectified that, and perhaps maybe there was a negative listing that was not from me, and those brought my credit score down. Please help
Under
me
what
understand.
circumstances, Village, does a credit score lowered, especially if there's no activity on my part?
But there was activity at his part. He's explaining to us that there were unauthorized inquiries,
okay.
And I stand to be corrected that there was also a dispute. So in that regard, let the credit bureau help him understand what analytics brought that down.
Okay, all right. Kabelo, your thoughts on this? How would you weigh into Elliot's comment there?
No, definitely. I mean, I like to look at things in a very logical way, and that would be, if at all I did not do. I mean, remember, for a credit score to go up or down is because I, as a consumer, have been responsible when it comes to my credit. But then now, if at all there was something that was done on my credit report that was not of my doing, I would think that yes, I definitely should go to the credit bureau and say, but I'm disputing this information. And if at all then this information was, you find that it was indeed incorrect, I would want it to be restored to how it was previously, because it wasn't of my doing. I didn't do anything to affect my credit score. In fact, the only thing I've done was all of the positive things, which is pay my accounts on time, yep, and not skip any payments. So it's definitely something that the consumer should take up with the credit bureau if they are not happy. Again, the credit ombudsman.
All right, let's leave it right there. We'll continue this conversation in just a moment. Mbugeli, as it's careful, stopping this way. Welcome back. We're still taking your calls on 011-714-6918 and 011-714-6919. Siyakhuluma futhi ke namhla ke negative credit listing noma ke contractual breach on the part of retailers and as well as service providers. Let's take our next caller. Sina Fred ulapha ke Thogeni. Sawubona hlelo, sawubona baba.
Yes, hello, kunjani?
Siphilile khulu baba, khuluma nathi baba.
Yes, Mina, what I'm looking at here, I'm looking at the disadvantage of the consumers on the side of transparency, because the only time when the consumer will know that things are not okay when it comes to buying, it's when the creditor is saying to him, no, you don't qualify because what credit bureau, it's not right. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. That will be the only time when the consumer will know. My say or suggestion would be, let there be a proper relationship between the three. Let the creditor have that advantage, let the consumer also have advantage. If it can be so, let the creditors be able to notify the consumers to say your credit score or your credit is not good, so that the relationship will enable the consumer to know exactly where he or she is standing, rather than only to be aware when he's trying to buy a car or a furniture. So I'm looking at the disadvantage here on the side of consumers. There is no transparency. The only transparency and the advantage is with the credit bureau and also the creditors. That's what I needed to suggest about.
Oh, great point, Fred. Thank you so much for raising that point. Fred, you are suggesting, he's making a suggestion, and I hope, Kabelo, you're also listening here. He's making a suggestion that even the retailers and the credit providers should notify the consumers about a lower credit score. And I suppose as well as a counter question to this suggestion is, do they have the right, though? Do they have the legal standing to be notifying consumers of a low credit score?
Okay, so over and above what we have discussed already, lay a free credit report every year from AMA credit bureaus. AMA credit bureaus, banama products that they sell. And once we create awareness, that's what is going to empower the consumer, because the credit provider and the credit bureau bane power. But if you look at this, the bigger scheme of things, the consumer, low ane more power. It's just a matter of creating awareness. Because one, over and above the free credit report, ama bureaus, baba nama products, la bawa tengisayo. Whereby you buy certain products from them, and then maybe it can be tracing, it can be alert to say that every time there's an inquiry on your credit report, then you get notified. Because remember, when you start applying credit, you consent that the credit provider should check your credit reports with the credit bureaus, because by law they need to do that. But once you buy certain products over and above the free credit report, then you get these additional things that can be beneficial for you. So it's just a matter of the consumer shopping around at the credit bureaus according to his liking. But we can say that in the end is a matter of awareness. We feel that the consumer, with the right information, they also, can get control of the situation.
True. Kabelo, your thoughts on this suggestion raised by Fred? Fred is basically saying that the retailers and the credit providers should be notifying the consumers of, of a low credit score.
No, definitely. I agree 100% with what Selina has mentioned. Number one, the credit bureaus do have certain products available for consumers so that they get notified should any activity basically happen on their credit profiles. So they can contact the credit bureaus and find out exactly what type of mechanisms do they have for you as a consumer to protect you when it comes to that, to the scoring and all of that. And again, I will say it again, I will repeat it again. Also be proactive, check your credit profile regularly. Take advantage of the fact that you do have the right to get your free credit report. And the thing is, let's not forget that I also mentioned earlier that if at all there's an adverse listing that a credit provider is going to list on your credit profile, they need to inform you 20 working days prior to them listing an adverse listing on your credit profile, so that you know exactly what it is that you can do, perhaps like enter into a payment arrangement before they can list that adverse listing. But when it comes to then your month-to-month payments and the update of your credit profile, there are definitely products available at the credit bureaus. It is just for us as consumers to contact those credit bureaus and make use of those products.
All right, thanks for the Kabelo. Let's take our next caller. Sina Kevin ulapha eGqeberha sakumukela ehlelweni sawubona.
Hello.
Khuluma nathi baba sawubona. Kevin from Gqeberha, welcome to the show.
Yes, good day to you, sir. My name is Kevin. I'm calling from Port Elizabeth.
Welcome. What's on your mind, sir?
Yes. I got the issue here with the bank because you see that generally I am a foreigner, and because I am a temporary resident in South Africa, whenever I go to the bank and ask, if I go for the furniture shop and ask for stuff to buy, they will validate quickly. But if I start about a car, if I ask about a car, they will be telling me that no, you are a temporary resident and you got only 2 years permit or 3 years permit. You need to be clearing those payment on those 3 years. But when I ask about houses, the bank will give me the house quickly. Something that I'm supposed to be paying in maybe in 20 years or in 30 years. But why don't they, how can they give me the house that I'm going to pay in 30 years? But when I'm asking about a car that I'm going to pay in 5 years, then you reject the proposal saying that no, your permit, you are a temporary resident, so if you want to pay the car, you need to pay it on those 2 or 3 years that you have. On 2 or 3 years that you have. But it doesn't make sense to me, because if you are giving me the house and then I have to pay for 30 years, why don't you consider my permit?
Okay, Kevin, that's a tough one. Thank you so much for raising that question. Our guests will definitely answer your question, but we're going to take a break right now, and we'll be back with more right after this. Yilungelo, Lakho. Welcome to our final segment. Well, we had Kevin lapha eGqeberha. Abekhuluma ke ngekuthi ke ngiyethemba kuzivile ngesikhalo sakhe. Yes.
Uyabuza uKevin ukuthi why would you grant me credit? Why would you grant me credit on a house which is a bigger debt and decline me on a car which is debt encane, right? That is what we heard him saying. I'm sure the credit providers can answer to that, but we do know that a house appreciates in value. Okay. So if I buy a house, so we're talking about different assets here. Property, plant and equipment. So here we are talking about property. We do know that houses do appreciate in value. So if I infer to this, me as a credit provider, okay, then I sell you this house. Chances are it will appreciate in value. Come 2 years, I've got a better chance of getting my money that I have invested in granting you credit. And we do know that a car as an asset do depreciate in value. They use different methods. They use a straight line method to depreciate cars. They use different methods of depreciation. So if I'm a credit provider and I need to make a decision with an asset that depreciates in value, what guarantees do I have that at a later stage I will be able to get to get my money back? Basically, so those are what we do know, that properties like Yilungelo, they are appreciator in value, and Yilungelo, they are depreciator. Then again, to Kevin's point, it is again within his right to say that bayang decline, why bang decline? But his really issue, it looks like the credit provider did some due diligence, because said kuye ukuthi I working permit yakho itshengisa 2 years, and the debt for that car, who knows that normally we look at 72 months to repay imoto. So with such a depreciating asset, what do I do when your permit iyaphela? Uyela ekhaya and ngihlezi ne asset a depreciating.
Okay, please hold your thoughts, Selina. We will take a final caller. Sina Godfrey ulapha ngePitoli. Please be brief. Godfrey, welcome to the show.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, sir? Please shoot straight to it. What's on your mind?
Yeah, yazi nenkinga lana ngingaboleka imali ebhenke ekhize yabona. So manje mangicela ukuboleka le mali le, so ngabane nenkinga ngokuthi ngingabhadala back yabona. So manje ngithulile ngathola umsebenzi futhi. Manje mangithi ngiyoboleka imali futhi ebhenke bayahala abafuna ukungipha, so now it's almost 10 years. So ngifuna ukuyazi ukuthi umuntu uthi blacklist ithatha for how long?
Bathi abafuna ukukunika i-credit ngoba you've been blacklisted. Is that what they're saying?
It take how long to be blacklisted? So okay, it's 3 years. So
Okay, Godfrey, thank you so much for that question. Now, Kabelo, I'm sure you've heard both questions. The earlier question, I think it was Kevin from Kabeja. He's a foreign national here in South Africa and Ugu contract. So when he approaches the bank for credit, well, for a car, it was much difficult to give him credit for a car, but it was much easier granting him credit for a house. Isn't that bizarre, though?
I mean, yes, Selena answered it perfectly, in fact. And I think that what I would like to actually just add to it is the fact that let's remember that this whole industry is about risk. The credit provider, when they take your credit profile, they look at the fact that, wait a minute, if you come to me as a consumer and you want me to give you my money, how much of a risk are you? They have to check whether yes, they do not know you like that, right? We're not friends. As the credit provider is not your friend, so they would not know what type of person you are. They rely on the information that they get on your credit profile. They rely on the information that you give to them when they're doing their assessment. And the thing is, if at all they find that, wait a minute, this is a bit risky for us, obviously they're going to either decline or they will take it to the interest and say, okay, we'll charge you more interest simply because you're a bit of more of a risk for us to give you our money or the loan that you're asking for. So we need to take that into consideration that, number one, they look at the risk factor. If at all as a consumer you've got a low credit score, they will look at the fact that if at all you've got a low credit score, that means you are more of a risk. And that is why sometimes as well, when you've got a low credit score, they will give you a higher interest rate simply because of looking at the fact that should you not be able to pay us back, at least we know that we have charged you a little more than a consumer who's actually a good consumer, who's a good paying consumer. And we know that at least they are basically, according to your credit profile, they're a good consumer. So that's not much of a risk for us as a credit provider.
All right, Kabelo Timel, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Kanye nawe Selina, siyabonga ukuhlanganyela nathi. Ake bekunene sesifika kanjalo kumaphethelweni ehlelo lethu namhla. Ngitsike angibonge ivakashi lethu ngekuba nathi ke namhla ngithanza ukubonga kanye nani ngebabukela emakhaya ngekuba nathi kuze bengimanje. Please do join us again for yet another consumer affairs discussion from Miss Mpio Ngwane and the rest of the team. Sisike nisale kahle and do have a great week ahead. Cheers.